Hey everyone.
Hey y'all.
Welcome back to Worth the Wait. We are so sorry for the delay. When you're in a long distance relationship, it's a little bit challenging to coordinate when you're going to be filming, and we're doing another video on that, the long distance relationships, but we're happy to be back, and we have a really exciting topic today for you. So we don't want to waste any time, so we're going to go ahead and get right into it. We've been praying on this for such a long time. We're really happy about it, so we hope you enjoy it. So guys, today we are going to speak about sexual intimacy in dating. Some of our followers have asked questions, how far is too far, and how do you keep it Christian while also keeping it intimate in your relationship? So that's what we're going to tackle today. We're going to talk about the boundaries that we have in our relationship. We're going to talk about maybe like the foundation of those boundaries that we established together, and then we're just going to share a little bit about our own personal experience with intimacy in previous relationships. So
So a little bit on my past views on, intimacy and Christian relationships or boundaries. For a very long time, I didn't see anything wrong with having a relationship that didn't have sexual boundaries. And that was because I didn't really have those open and honest conversations with older couples about whether or not they waited for marriage, and if they did, what did they do, what didn't they do, how did they do it. I never had any of those conversations. I grew up in the church and going to church all my life, and I knew that, or rather I was always told that you should wait until marriage, and I held on to that in my moral values, but I didn't really know why. I didn't have a foundation. I thought it was just taboo or something traditional that old people were just holding on to, because everywhere that I looked, people were having sex and relationships. So one day I was just having a random conversation with a friend. I don't even know how we got to talk about this, but I think I mentioned something along the lines like, I don't think premarital sex, anything about premarital sex is in the Bible. And he was just like, really? Look up fornication. So I was like, okay. So I looked it up. I was just like, oh wow, like really? I didn't know that this was in the Bible the whole time. I started to look at all the texts that talked about fornication and lust and adultery, and I was just like, wow, so this is not just a tradition, and this is really what God's standard is for his people. And I guess later I'll go like a little bit into what that meant for me and changing, my perspective towards this.
now for my little short testimony about intimacy and how that's played a role in my life. My time of preparation and also my time in this relationship thus far with Sharetta really helped me understand the critical truths about respecting your body when in a relationship with someone. In the past, I'll be very honest in saying that I thought that sex and sexual activities were appropriate, as long as you like somebody. And that was really destructive to me. As I continued to engage in those activities at that time in my life, my view of sex and my view, ultimately of women, was slowly deteriorating. I viewed sex merely as this, self or even a mutually satisfying experience between two people that happen to like one another. And as I continue to engage in these activities and continue to, attract these things to myself, it led to a dark path of objectification and really of disrespect towards my fellow sisters. By exposing my mind and my heart to sex, to sexual activities, pornography, these very real sexual, fleshly desires, it became increasingly difficult to even look at women without having these images and thoughts come to my mind, which really hits home the point about the importance of guarding your heart.
Alright, so we thought about a few reasons why it's important to have boundaries in a courtship or in a Christian relationship. And the first one being is that sex is everywhere. You see it in the movies, you see it on commercials, books, everywhere you look, everywhere you turn nowadays, sex is there. This is why it's even more important for you to talk about this and how it relates to your relationship. Sexual temptation is also real, especially as young people, and we have all these things in front of us. Like, we need to really talk about what this means and how it affects our relationship. On the flip side, or on the dual side, sex is also a beautiful gift from God, and I think that because of the worldly image of it, God's original intention has been perverted, but we have to go back to the beginning of what God really intended for sex to be. And I think that above all, he desires is for us to use it in its proper context. And everything that he's created and that he's given us, he always has a context in which he desires for us to use it. With all gifts, there's a reason and there's a way to use it. The Bible only talks about sex between a husband and a wife. So ultimately, we looked at our relationship, and if we ain't married and he ain't put a ring on it, why should we be having sex if what the standard in the Bible is that sex is between a husband and a wife? When I think about when the Bible's talking about sex, I also think about 1 Thessalonians 4, where it talks about how it's the will of God and for our sanctification that we abstain from fornication. Another scripture that I think about as well is Galatians 5:16, where it talks about walking in the spirit and not the flesh. And these two texts just let me know that obviously there's one thing that's going on, the fleshly, worldly desire. There's another thing that's going on that's spiritual, and it's God's desire.
Reason number 2 why it's important to talk about boundaries and intimacy as it relates to your Christian dating relationship is because as Christians, if marriage is your ultimate goal that you're working towards, purity is such an important stepping stone to get in there. Proverbs 4:23 tells us that above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. So basically what that's saying is that we really have to be careful what we're allowing into our hearts, for what we're allowing into our hearts is ultimately going to manifest in our lives. I was reading this book by Ravi Zacharias. It's called I, Isaac, Take Thee, Rebecca. I'm not sure if I posted the information before, but I will include it down below so that anyone can read it for their own pleasure. But basically, the author makes an argument that you have to guard the covenant of the marriage relationship that you desire, and that purity is ultimately more of a question of presence rather than a question of absence. Now, looking at our relationship, we can see that if we focus our energy on what we want to be present in our relationship, what we don't want to be a part of our relationship, it becomes easier to determine.
Number 3! The third reason why it's important to have boundaries is because, let's keep it real, we all have sexual desires. We were created that way. It's in our human nature that when you're attracted to someone, those sexual feelings will arise. But as we said before, God designed us to act on those feelings in the right context. And having boundaries allows you to acknowledge that, yes, I have these desires, but even more so, I desire to use it in the right context that God wants me to use it in.
Fred and I would never lie and say that sexual temptation is not real and present in our relationship. It definitely is. As individuals who are attracted to one another and we care a lot about each other, that's going to be present in the relationship. That's going to be a part of it. It's basic human nature. Just as an example, Shredda and I started off our relationship allowing kissing to take place. We had heard about a lot of couples who had saved their first kiss for marriage, but we really did find that it was a distraction in our case, so it continued on. It wasn't until a few months later that it would be times where we would be kissing and the moment would get so intense and so passionate, and I would feel myself start to lust for her, and that's when I knew that something had to be that changed. I had to go to God in prayer about these feelings that I was having and this growing temptation in my heart to want more and more from Sharetta. At the time I was reading the book that I mentioned before, and really I just felt convicted that Sharetta and I should save our next kiss for marriage, if that isn't God's plan for us. And yes, it did sound ridiculous at first. Yes, it did sound extreme. Yes, it was challenging to present this to Sharetta and say that, babe, I prayed about this and I think that we should stop kissing. It was really challenging for me to say that, babe, I really think that this is taking away from the purpose of our relationship and the focus of our relationship. And I really feel strongly convicted about this. I prayed about it, and I feel like God has really placed the solution on my heart. So, this is what I like to do.
Alright, so I know some of y'all been asking or wondering about this part, so we're just going to talk about some of the boundaries that we have. I think the day after we decided to enter this courtship, we sat down and we were like, okay, so what are our boundaries going to be? And that was like an awkward conversation to have, because it's just like things that you feel come so naturally when you like someone or something like that. You really have to step back and say, if we do this, it's going to lead me down this path. So anyway, like Brandon started saying, one of them is that we recently decided to stop kissing until marriage, if that's in God's plan for us. And
it's been a couple months. Give us some credit.
And amongst that, some of the other boundaries that we have is one, of course, no sex, no foreplay, no type of sex, whatever word you put in it, or anything like that.
Anything that has sex in it?
Nah.
Out.
Secondly, we don't cuddle. And I know that sounds strange, but a lot of people, including us, you might be up late or whatever, you might be watching a movie and you feel like just slugging in.
It's cold, babe, right?
And having like your bodies close to each other. But like when you're next to someone, you're feeling them, it's like you're gonna be led to want to do more. So just as a safeguard, we don't cuddle. And no, that doesn't mean that when we watch movies, we're like
2 episodes, like 2 sides of the couch.
We can be like this, but we're just trying to be all up under each other.
Because we're talking to y'all.
Right?
Yeah.
What we have is no touching in inappropriate areas or anything like that. Don't be brushing your hand against anything or like sliding your hand on something, trying to be all slick and whatnot.
I mean, we both had a pretty good idea of like things that would make our minds go into places that they shouldn't be going. So we discussed that in the beginning where I was like, babe, you really can't do this because that would cause my mind to do this or to want this. So be honest with yourself and talk about those things.
Yeah. Ultimately, I just look at it as like what is going to make it easier for me personally, and I think Brandon as well, to not fall into temptation. If that means extremely, like we can't hold hands because when I hold your hand, I'm going to want to do more, then yeah, that's just going to have to be part of it. I'm trying to make this easier for myself on this journey that we're on.
Right.
And I don't see this as a punishment. Some people might think like, what? Like,
legalistic?
No. Actually, this helps me because I know like, all right, well, I know it's not going to go this far. I'm not going to feel this way because we already have this barrier in place so that, I can be stopped before anything happens.
And there will be moments where you will be tempted to go that far, but you have to discuss it in that moment. There's so many times where something might have happened, there was a boundary or some element of a boundary that we hadn't previously discussed, and I was like, babe, like I really feel that this is taking away from me keeping my mind pure and my heart pure. So can we please work to like not do this in the future so that our minds stay pure.
Might sound like this is easy, but it's not. It's not.
I'm struggling right now, y'all.
I was about to say
just hearing her talk. I'm like, I'm here.
Like, especially like having gone so long not seeing each other and stuff like that, it gets hard. We're not gonna lie, but God is first. And lastly, I think this is just more personally for me, so I guess I'm gonna speak to my ladies out there. A boundary for me is being careful about what I wear. So I'm very aware of, how I look and certain things and stuff like that. And I don't want to, this guy, and I don't.
They all thinking it, they know it's real.
Anyway. And I don't want to cause Brandon to stumble or to fall in that aspect. I don't want to wear something that's going to make it really hard for him to focus and stay committed to him wanting to cherish and honor and respect me and, the boundaries that we have in place. So for me, that means like, I think twice about what I'm going to wear. Like, is this too low? Is this too short? Is this too tight? Is this too revealing? Stuff like that. And I mean, like in general, I try not to wear that stuff, but I go the extra mile now that I'm with someone and I know that like I'm around him and he's going to be seeing me. I try to go that extra mile to make sure that I have a boundary in what I'm wearing so I don't cause him to lust after me. So like we said, these are just our boundaries for our relationship. Everyone faces different temptations and desires. So of course this is tailored to what we need as Brandon and Shretta. Like your situation might be different, but what we just wanted to highlight is that it's important to have these things and your experiences might be different. But we just want to, I guess get on here on YouTube and show that we are, one girl and one guy that's trying to really live this out in God's way.
We've said a lot about boundaries and intimacy today, but to sum it all up, boundaries serve essentially a dual purpose. What you allow to dwell inside your relationship, what you allow to take place in your relationship, building each other up in God, focusing on God, and essentially presenting this person before God, will ultimately help you define, what's not going to be a part of your relationship. What are going to be the boundaries in your relationship? If you want God to be at the center of your relationship, then ultimately you're not going to have any room for sex or for youthful lust or for giving into sexual immorality. For these are the things that the Bible tells us to flee. So focus on what's present in your relationship. Make sure that God is at the center, and then your boundaries become much more clear to you.
Also, having boundaries has allowed us to grow emotionally and spiritually, and just to have fun and focus on like so many other things than having sex. I don't know how else to say it, but yeah, it just allows us to like really see each other, really become friends, and get to know each other and talk about everything. It's so much fun, guys. No, but really, it has really helped our relationship grow in so many other ways, and we just trust that in making this decision to honor God and to have these boundaries in place and to live out His word in our lives, that if we come to marriage, that He'll honor us as well.
Yes. So, Shredder said this so beautifully, I got distracted for a second. But, so thank you again for watching. We love you. We're praying for you. We are believing that this will bless you in some way. Please feel free to respond back below. Do your thing, comments, whatever you want to say about the topic, let us know.
If you have any questions about anything that we said, you can also email us. If it's anything personal that you don't really want to write on YouTube, you can email us at worththewait18@gmail.com.
We'll put it somewhere down.
Yeah.
Here somewhere.
But yeah, just email us and we'll be happy to get back to you. And thank you for watching.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Take care. Remember, sex is worth the wait.